What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a video for anyone looking to plate using the Caswell copycat zinc plating for I use it for vintage motorcycles, doing the nuts, the bolts, all sorts of different things. So I'm going to show you my setup. This is the manual that you get when you buy the plating kit, and I'll show you online what the kit is that I bought, and I bought quite a few over the years. And here's the site, and they offer all sorts of things. I use the gas tank sealer. It is, to me, as good as anything you're going to get, and I use the plating kits. So let's go right to the plating kits. And as you can see, they offer all sorts of different stuff, but we're looking for the copycat CAD/zinc plating kit. And there it is. Let's click on that. So this is what it looks like. Just want to make sure you're in the right place. So there's a video, a helpful video on how to. I'm going to show you a layman's or someone who's done it for a few years, where I've gone to, what I've kind of gotten to as far as a process of cleaning and of plating. And I'm not going to make this very long, so I'm going to rip right through it. This was the first kit I bought, and it was good, no problems at all. It was just small. I couldn't do everything I wanted to do, but it worked the very same as the 3.5 kit, 3.5 gallon or 3 gallon basically. It comes with 3.5 gallon buckets, and it comes with everything you need there in the way of the chemicals, the plates. It comes with the manual. The little wheel, the pump works. I just haven't had any use for the wheel. I've tried it. So let's go right back to the system. But before we do, you will want to buy, unless you're doing unless you're trying to figure just a CAD system, you just want it to look like cadmium. But the zinc plating is what all the brand new bolts from Honda and, whatever motorcycle you're building, this is, the shiny look. The CAD's a little bit of a dull look. So you're going to want this blue chromate, and it's a final dip that you do. Now I have the blue chromate and the yellow chromate, which is, it's almost a must-have too, but not necessarily. I mean, it's just if you want that yellow chrome look, or that yellow zinc plating that is kind of factory on a lot of things. You see it on the brake, like on classic cars. The brake booster is that yellow, shiny, good-looking. And then what I've played with lately has been the black chromate, which has been really cool, and I'm going to show you that too. When you get your kit, you're going to get a certain amount of brightener, but I've had to buy extra brightener, so that's just something that you may buy, but you don't need any of it. You just need the kit and probably the blue chromate if you just want shiny silver bolts. And the last thing you're going to need is a power supply. And this one right here is what I think they've replaced mine with. I believe mine goes to 5 amps if I'm not mistaken, but you're going to need a power supply. Now, a lot of guys are going to figure out they can get their own power supply, a used power supply somewhere. It's just a controllable, and I'm not exactly sure how all that works. I just going to show you how I work mine. So now let's just go right back to the system. So my system has evolved, and you're going to need, and this is all I have, it's just this simple little Walmart hot plate. It's an Oster. Let's see if it's got a model. I don't even think it's got a model. I think it's just your cheap hot plate. And if I hold that on there long enough, maybe you can get a model number or something off of it. But so you need a way to heat up your degreaser. Okay, and so what I'm doing, and today is a good day to make this video because I am going to replace my degreaser. So what I've got here is a 3-gallon, I believe it's a 3-gallon, 12 quart, 11.4 liter. So it's about a 3-gallon. This is 3.5-gallon tub. So what you have, and the process is, I'm going to show you through the process, but you've got like a power supply. I'll turn this on with your positive and negative coming out, and what they call a pickling solution. You can see I'm going to actually filter this today too. That doesn't need to be done very often, but why not? I'm putting in new degreaser. I've been using this for about 3 motorcycle restorations, and one point in time I had to replace this solution because I think I just got lazy on cleaning up the parts, and I think I got a lot of contaminants in it, and it just wasn't plating right. And so that's something that might happen to you. Then I've got a timer, a spray bottle for distilled water, very important. This is a zinc rinse. Now, I'm going to talk about rinses real quick. Most of the videos show that you've got a full tub of rinse, full tubs of rinses for your acid rinse, for your degreaser rinse, and for your pickling solution rinse. And whatever rinses, whatever else you're going to dip these things in, you basically want to rinse them in distilled water. Now, everything in this kit is distilled water. There's no tap water that you're using. Okay, so I've got distilled water everywhere. And one thing that I found is distilled water is hard to find since COVID. So that's a challenge. And it's $1.70 to $2 a gallon. So I'm looking into how to make it at home. But anyhow, so here's the setup. And like I said, I've got the blue chromate. And what that looks like is just kind of a bluish liquid that you mix up. There's instructions on that. I'm not going to go through all that. And then you got your yellow chromate, which is yellow. And my new toy is black chromate, which is yellow, but it turns it black. All these are other just empty buckets that I've got. This right here is some stuff I ordered from Caswell, and it is the Mega Black. And it's just a different way of turning your bolts black, but I wouldn't waste your time with that unless I'm missing something, because the black chromate, I'm going to show you what a black chromate looks like. This is a 200X Honda, and as you can see, these pegs are not painted, they're plated. Especially the Kickstarter. Now the Kickstarter has been worn, of course, because of all the kicking over the lifespan, but you can see this brake lever. That is not painted. The cases are painted. These are all plated, all this linkage. This is painted, this master cylinder, but the shaft that goes down is the silvery blue chromate. And the rocker arm and this peg holder, all this linkage, and the foot brake is plated. Now I'm going to show you the plating after the plating I did with the Caswell system. This is my last project that I just finished. It's a 200X. But look at that. I mean, if that is not beautiful, I don't know what is. This brake lever, the foot pegs, all that linkage, and see, here's your blue chromate, and your black chromate. I mean, this is, I'm telling you, you will be so happy if you start doing this. Now, I'm going to show you also some gold chromate. There is some silver chromate right next to some gold. There's the silver, and that little nut there is gold chromate. Now, it's not full-blown chromate, gold chromate. You can see this. This is a spoke piece, and this is full yellow. I mean, if you really want to get it yellow. But what I try to achieve here is a look that where the bolt would look. What happens is over time, these silver bolts, nuts and bolts, will kind of get a yellow look to them. They'll kind of turn a little yellow. So I do some custom plating, whereas it's not quite shiny silver blue chromate, but it's not yellow either. It's like an aged blue chromate. And I won't get into that, but you can play with all that stuff. But getting back to the full dips and rinses, they're not really necessarily needed in my opinion. I've done a lot of this. I went to small buckets that I can replace the water regularly, and I overuse the spray method. Now, the spray method is, and I'll show you how that goes, but so do you go out and buy all these, big buckets for all your rinses? I wouldn't. I'm just going to show you how I do it. You can make up your own mind. And the last piece to the puzzle here is an acid bath, which is nothing more than a 5 or 10%, I believe it's 5% solution of distilled water again and muriatic acid. And I've got a lot of leftover stuff. I actually bought an aquarium pump, and I've got an aquarium heater, and I'll show you where I put that. So let's just get right started. It's best just to get right into it. I don't like those videos where people talk for 100 minutes, while they're driving down the road and picture themselves just explaining every knick-knack. No, this is a show and tell. So let's get right to the process of plating. First thing is the book you get is invaluable. It will give you all sorts of information, and then I've written notes in here over time. This is very handy. It just shows you, all of your wiring, how to wire the system, how to hang things, just what it is you're doing, and it's just the first place to go. Now, after you've mixed up the degreaser package with the required amount of distilled water, we're going to get this on high, and I can hear it's cooking. I filtered the water. I'm not going to go into that. I filtered the pickling solution because I've used so much of it, and they do recommend from time to time you could filter it. And this is how I do it. I just have a little coffee filter and a funnel. Scoop all really the good stuff. This is all the stuff that's settled to the bottom. So this is really about the only part that I filter. The rest I can scoop out. It's nice and clean. I just scoop it into a new bucket without stirring it all up, and then just filter the bottom residue. But none of that matters to anyone who's starting a new kit. So let's just stay on the new kit. So you've mixed up all of your pickling solution. Don't know what they call that in the kit, but it's a couple of packages, and distilled water. So now I've got a nice little, and this one's worked for years. It's an aquarium heater. So plug that in and get that fired up, because the warmer you can get your solution here and your degreaser without the degreaser, just boiling. You need 160 is what it calls for. It's nice if it's 170, 180. This, if it's 90, that's great. Warm days, you don't necessarily probably have to heat it, but in the winter like it is now, and I just heat it all the time. Summer, winter, I just turn both of these on when I'm ready to plate, and about 45 minutes later, everything's warmed up and ready to go. So we've got our solutions, our degreaser, our pickling solution. Now let's move on to the first step, installing the aquarium pump. Now it's got little suction cups, and I just use this little wooden spoon to push it against the side, and I'm going to show that installed. And there it is, about halfway down. And so the next step are the plates. Now these plates, I've ordered a new set of plates. You can see they're rounded. They're much thinner. I don't think they weigh much more than maybe half of what they weighed when they were new. But I've done a lot of plating with this kit. So with the new plates coming, that might be helpful, and just the amount of plating or how long it takes to plate. So got the plates in, and now the wiring. So the book will tell you that the positive lead, the red lead, will go to the plates or anodes, those two flat metal pieces I put in, and then the negative will go to the bar that will hold your pieces, and I'll show you that. It's just a bar that you make out of 1/2-inch copper. You squeeze the ends together, and it lays across the top of your pickling solution. So the negative clips on to the back. Make sure you got a really good connection there. And however you get it, this lays somewhat like that. And then you grab your positive lead, plug it in, and then you've got a little wire that you got to make that connects the two anodes. And these are the anodes, these metal. I know all this stuff to me was just totally Greek, so I'm trying to explain it as well as I can, as if I was just starting to plate. So as you see, positive, and then you've got a little connector wire that comes over here and clips on there. So you've got your positive charging is going into these plates, and when you hang your piece off of this nice copper tube with copper wire into the solution, that's going to be taking the current out. So the current's going to come in, it's going to go through these plates, it's going to transfer a small amount off these plates of the copycat plating onto the item that you've got in the water. And it just depends on how long you leave it in there as to how thick that plating will be on the piece. This is the acid bath, and it's just a little square bin. And one little trick that I've used is, I've downsized my rinses, right? I used to rinse in the bigger container. This way I can change out the rinse economically, quite a bit more often without using near as much. But also, one thing that you can do is you can take the rinse when you're putting together a new bath of acid. You can use the rinse in here instead of brand new distilled water, because it's just got a small solution, whatever rinses off these parts, of acid already in it. So let's get this acid at, like I said, 5%. Let's make this batch up. So I've got roughly a gallon of water and roughly a cup of acid, muriatic acid, and that should be our solution. This is like horseshoes and hand grenades. I mean, you could probably put in more, but 5% solution should be just fine. So I'm going to start out with some spokes. They're typical corroded. They've got very little shine. They're a little rusty near the ends. So this is what I do for cleaning up just about anything. Just get the wire wheel going. And I want to just take off just the stuff that I think is rust. And this is just the first step. This all here looks good. So I'm going to do about 3. Well, actually I'm going to do 6. You can see when you wire wheel it, you can get a shine. But that's not so much as the importance here. We're trying to get the rust. And that's just on the first pass here. So you can see I'm just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. And I think what I'll do is give you a real rusty one out of these 6. Probably the rustiest one I've got. Now that's some rust right there. And so I'll clean this up and then we'll go to the next step. So you can see the difference between what I kind of lightly wire wheeled and what's not. So I've got 6 of them here, and that's a workable amount. You probably could do 3 or even 1 in your first try. But now is the time you want to do something like straightening, like I'm going to straighten this spoke, or any sort of repair, or just final massaging, because from here on out we're just going to be plating and you want a finished product. So now all we're going to do is drop them in, and this stuff can make a splash. So you want to wear stuff that you're not going to care about, because a little splash on your clothes and you got a hole. So you can see that right away they start to show, the bubbling. Now what that's doing is it's taking off the old plating. That's all we're doing here, is just getting the old plating off. Now that's why I'm not cleaning them up and shining them up and making them look beautiful, because at this point we're just doing an acid bath to get rid of the old zinc plating. And this is going to take varying amount of time. So it could take about 10 minutes. Some things, if they hardly have any plating, or if they don't have any plating, you'll know right away because they won't bubble. And so you just wait until it stops to bubble. The bubbling stops. Sometimes you got to flip them because the plating, like on a washer, will be sitting against the bottom of this tank and not getting as much acid circulating around it. So you flip them, move them around, so forth. You'll know when they're done. They just stop bubbling. They look done. So I just use this little silver spoon, and now just the typical cover your ass. You should be using all of the safety equipment that you can muster up on Earth, and because this is, it's acid, and so just be warned. I want you to be warned. But you can see, here's an old one, and here's one that's been acid bathed. So you clean them all up, and basically I just pull them out of the solution. I rinse them in the rinse, and let's get all those wiped off, and just use a white terry cloth. And I want to show you, this was a brand new clean cloth, but you can see, let's see if I can get a little more on this. You can see that there's, a little bit of corrosion still coming off of it, but they're looking good. And at this point, you've got no protection from rust, so it'll flash rust. I've had stuff sit here, the phone rings, or you start cleaning on some other stuff and you forget that you've just got stuff that you haven't dried. If it's dry, it's good. But if it's sitting out after you've rinsed it, it's going to flash rust on you. And it might even flash rust a little bit over time if you leave it for a few days, even dry. So the idea is that you plate these start to finish. You don't wait around. You can see that they clean up pretty well. Now, you're not really trying to get the rust off. If you don't say there's something you don't get, that there's some rust, it'll take some of it off if there's plating underneath it. But if it's rusted up into the middle of this metal, it's likely either going to rub off in the towel you just did a little bit, but it's still going to be there. And then, so you're halfway there, though. There's the difference. Okay. So now back to the wire wheel. Now you want to get it as shiny as possible. Now you can also do I do other parts in a bead blaster, a blasting cabinet, and go right to the plating. It's just not going to be near as shiny. Now it helps to have gloves on this process because they get hot. But I'm going to show you a plating ready spoke. And then at this point, you're going to want to have all the rust off. And it's, everybody makes these things sound on YouTube like it's just so complicated and such a problem. Everything's a problem and complicated, and watch out for this. Just get it shiny. Just get it shiny. Try and get all the rust off. And you should have a beautiful piece when you're done. The next step is to try and figure out the surface area. And the reason you're doing the surface area is you're trying to determine the amount of current that you need to set that power supply at so that it doesn't burn it or underplate. The undercurrent's not good and overcurrent's not good. And all I can tell you is this is Caswell's surface area calculation tool. Okay. So there's different, like a rectangle, circle, ellipse, triangle. The closest, what's really handy to me is the bolts. When you're restoring and nice, shiny, new plated OEM, NOS, original bolt that came with the bike is pretty impressive. So you can see down here, there's a box that you enter the radius. This is all in inches, okay? And So the radius is basically you measure the width of the threaded area of the bolt, and then you divide it by 2. So it's just half the thickness of this bolt on the shaft, not the head. And so you put that in there, and it's some form of 0.5 inches or whatever. And then your length is just like it shows here, your length from the bottom of the head to the end of the bolt. That's the length, and so forth and so on. And then it'll calculate your surface area. That's very handy for nuts and bolts, and it gets it right on the money or real close. So something tells me that I'm looking with this spoke, I'm looking at a cylinder. So with that, I'm going to have to kind of measure the thickness of the spoke, cut that in half and put it here, and then the length of the spoke and put it here. And I'm going to get pretty close to my amperage. So I'm going to do that and then come back. Okay, so like I was saying, you've got your setting on inches. So let's see if we can get an inch here. So that's 1 inch. It's saying 1.0. So that's an inch. What we're going to do is we're going to measure, and what we've got there is 0.1225. So half of that would be 0.06. So let's measure that. Let's put that in here. 0.06. Okay, and then we got the height, which is how long the spoke is. So I'm going to have to measure that with a measuring tape. So I've got it at about 6.2 inches. So 6.2 inches. So now you just go over here and hit the calculate, and it'll give you the answer. This is what they say, and what is pretty much what you're going to find is there's 2.35 square inches of surface area on each one of these spokes. So you take that, 2.35, you could round it up to 2.36. So it's a real simple calculation. It's a 2.36 times 0.14. So 2.36 times 0.14 equals 0.33 per spoke, 0.33 amps. So it's not even an amp. So you take that, and we're going to do 6 times 6. And you come up with 1.98 amps. You want to, if you think something's amiss, recalculate it again. Sometimes I've, just transposed a number or done something, and all of a sudden it's like way too much current. And after a while, you kind of get used to, and you kind of can guess what the amperage is. Because there's some pieces, how are you ever going to measure it? They say you can take a foil and wrap it around and cut the foil and then lay the foil out flat, some real weird piece of metal. But anyhow, you can get into that later. I'm just going to give you the bare bones. So from here, we're going to wrap this and get this wrapped in wire so that we can get it into the first bath. So for the wire you're going to use, I just use, Romex. Just grab some Romex and strip the casing off. It's just your regular Romex. The thinner gauge, the better, to a certain point. And so this, this is your just everyday Romex. So I strip the wire. And there you have, there's your copper wire. So these are a little more difficult than your normal setup. But all we're going to do here is wrap the wire around the heads. And just go through that with all 6 of them. Now with the spokes, I wire both sides. I don't know. I mean, it probably doesn't need to be. I don't want to experiment, especially not for the video here for you guys. So there you go. Now we're just going to take this and dip it into the degreaser. Now, we turned this on probably an hour ago, and I can see it's bubbling. And I'm feeling over here, I'm feeling the side of the pickling solution, the plating bath, and it feels, you know, just lukewarm. So that's good. I mean, it was cold out here last night, 22 degrees outside. So we brought the temperature up inside probably to about, I don't know, 65. But all of the baths now, I think are up to temperature. If this is cold, they say it doesn't plate too well. I haven't really ever plated when it's really, really cold. But when it's spring or fall and it's, you know, it's not 100 degrees outside, but it's maybe 65, 70, it plated just fine. So there again, just a bunch of, you know, watch my video, get you all upset. It's not rocket science. So anyway, here is my thermometer, and we know it's over 160. I mean, we're at, oh yeah, boy, we're near 200 degrees, so that's perfect. The hotter the better. So we're gonna put the spokes in and just bend the metal wire, the copper wire, over so that it hangs there. And I'm just going to leave that for now. You just want it in there. And we're going to set the timer. And they say about 5 to 10 minutes. I give it 15 minutes. And if you buy a high quality Chinese timer, you have to tap it. So there you go. You can hear it ticking. So when that goes off, we'll pull it out of there, and then we're going to go to the next bath. So in the last few minutes here, I'm going to talk about Brightener. And the Brightener can be an issue. I think early on, my first kit, which was the smaller kit, 1.5 gallons, they kept telling me, and Caswell is very, very good. They have good customer service. They know what they're doing. I've called, talked to them many times. The first thing they said is I was probably using too much Brightener because I was getting the plating was just crackling off. You could hear it's like popcorn as it's drying. But what it was is I went through, a whole lot of parts. I mean, I plated a bunch of parts, and I think that I just reached a point where this solution was just contaminated with stuff. And I wasn't cleaning it as good as I'm showing you here. Was still coming out though. But so I kind of backed off on the Brightener a little bit, but really they say to use a 1/4 teaspoon. Start out with a 1/4 teaspoon. But I'm going to use 2 here because I don't think that was my problem. I think my problem was I just may have not been so clean on the parts I was putting in here. So we got the Brightener in. We're waiting for the alarm to go off for the spokes that are in the bath and the degreaser bath here. They'll be nice and clean. So we're almost ready to plate. So get the bar up on top here. And if you remember, we came up with the amperage for the spokes. That was 1.98. So the amperage is the lower, the voltage is the top. Now the voltage, I called Caswell also. The voltage, you don't even mess with the voltage. I think if you turn the voltage up or down, it really doesn't do anything because it automatically adjusts the voltage for the amperage. So if you go down here and you push the button, oh, we're ready. We're ready to plate. Push the button till you get to the bigger bar there. We need to go to 1.98. So that's 1.7. And just say 1.92. That's okay. And then it goes off automatically. So if you push it again, now you're going to see 1.92. So we're set at 1.92. Now there's a little output reader here. And that'll tell you there's a little button here also that says output. Basically, it turns the voltage on and off. So now it's on. Now it's off. So you can set it. And then if you want to lift your stuff out of the bath, you know, I'll just kill the power to it with the little button. I've taken stuff out of the bath where there's been 3 or 4 different nuts or bolts in there with the current still running. I've taken 2 of them out, and so the last one that was sitting still in there was getting triple the voltage, and it kind of funked up the plating. So anytime I take anything out of the bath, I just hit this little button. It turns off the voltage to the bath. So let's turn it off, and now we've got the parts ready to clean, spray down, and get into the pickling bath. So here's how I do it. I'm going to move over here a little. So you take your distilled water, and what I do while I'm waiting for this in the bath is I'm getting another set of spokes ready. And as you get better at it, you know, this whole thing will be a system for you, and it's just whatever system works. And as you can see, I've got some of the spokes in there, and they're ready to come out too. So let's get the first set of spokes out of the bath, and I'll show you how I clean those. Just take your spray bottle and spray as much of that solution off as possible. And I've got a degreaser rinse over here. Dip it a few times in that. And then I'll come back over and I'll hit it again. I don't think you can be too... At first I really fought the spray bottle. I thought, oh, it's just so much easier just to put it in the bath, have a big bath, and put it in there and dip it. And that's what everyone else pretty much has said on the videos I watched. But the spray came up, and I go, I don't need that. I mean, I'm in a bath. I've got it in the bath. It should be clean. Well, what I didn't figure out was that and I'll get you over here so you can see, that the bath themselves, you can see I'm laying these, and you adjust so that they kind of are even if you can. Again, it's not rocket science. You're just making a connection with this copper wire to the spokes. And then you've got over here, you can see that we're got the negative to the power supply. So now all we do, get that kind of centered between the plates or wherever. Some people move it around during the process, but basically, you know, it can just sit in one spot. Let's turn on the juice. So now we've got the current flowing through it. And the time that it takes, you can see already, I don't know if you can see it, but the copper has turned to zinc already. See that difference in the copper? So sometimes you can take a read off of that. Maybe it's a little too much juice. I tend to try to stay down on a little lower than what you would think or what I'm coming up with, and I am going to turn it down a little bit because those copper wires turned zinc. I mean, the zinc has plated onto those very fast. So there again, this is just all fine tuning. So I'm going to go 1.5. It's not rocket science. It's going to plate. So if you start to have problems, you're going to need to figure it out one way or another, looking at videos online. So I've got another 6 here to go in the bath. Get them in, and then we'll set the timer on this. Get this all in the bath here. And now I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm going to try to use just one copper wire for 6 spokes and see what the difference is. And I'll show you that at the end of the video. So we'll go to, I think 15 minutes is probably going to be good for the plating. So we'll come back then. All right, I'm going to take a look at it. It's been about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to turn off the power, and I'm just going to raise this whole bar. I don't know if you can see it or not, but they're not as shiny as they were. And that's the plating going on. And the copycat comes out, it's not supposed to be a real shiny. It's supposed to be kind of a dull gray, and then the shine comes when you do the chromate bath. All right, you're going to have to excuse the angle, the camera angle, but this is the only way that you're going to be able to see everything that we're doing here. So the alarm went off, 15 minutes. I think that's enough. So turn off the power, and then I'm going to lift this up, and we're going to take the spokes off. And now spray all of that plating juice off and give it a dip. At this point, I don't think that, the extreme cleanliness is any sort of an issue. You're going to see the spokes there are rather kind of a little bit of a dull look to them. So now, this is the blue chromate. And now we're going to dip them in there and kind of wiggle them around. I count to like, I don't know, 15, 20. It doesn't take forever. It's just a, kind of a call on your part, because I've looked at 100 videos and they all, just say different times. And you could leave it in there for a minute probably or 2, and I don't think it's going to make any difference. But if you only put them in there for 1 or 2, I don't think at that point you're going to get a total coverage of the chromate. So this is the chromate rinse I've got here. And I'm just going to give it a little rinse. One video, the guy said he dips them once. And there you have it. There are the spokes. And now they will brighten up and get shinier as they dry. So I'll show you what I do there. I run a fan up, and then you just feel where that fan is, and it's right there, right in front of the spokes. So we'll let these dry, and then I'll uncurl them, and I'll show you the end product. And here's the finished product. Now this is the first that the first set. Now I'm going to just tell you what the differences were. You can see that these aren't quite as shiny. This was the second set, and this is the third set. Now, to be honest, this one hasn't quite dried, but I see it shinier than this. What the difference is this one was done at 1.5 amps, which is a little less than what I had calculated, and it was double wired. This was single wired, and I upped the amperage to what I, using the calculator, what it figured out to, and I believe that it came out a little more dull, okay? And then this was the third batch, and what I did with it was I took the amperage back down to 1.5 instead of 1.9. So what I think we have here is a combination. These are, it's like they're brand new. They're still acceptable to me. I'm going to use them. But I'm going to, on the rest of my spokes, I'm going to double wire. But you don't need to double wire on a nut or a bolt. I put nuts and bolts, like 2 or 3, even 4 or 5 smaller ones on one wire, all twisted up, and so just experiment. But this shows how the amperage and the amperage changes, I think, the outlook. If I had not done this one, I would think that maybe there was, all the brightener was eaten up with this, and that there wasn't enough brightener. But as I can see here, because that spoke there is a little dull. Now all you got to do is take some triple fine, and I'll show you. I'm going to take this, let's just take, I think this is the dullest of all of them, this one right here. So let's just take this one out. And I'm going to use some triple fine steel wool. And I'll show you how it'll just brighten up. And I'm going to do that with all of them. So they look, exactly the same. The plating's still on them. Now, look at the difference between those two. These are, I want to say, the dullest of all the batches. Although it's still shiny up in here, and here's one. Here's the dullest that I've gotten, with very little effort. Just run the steel wool across it. That brings you to that. So I hope this helps get you going and explaining kind of like in my kind of terms, which is just regular people, not this sort of setup here is probably not for an engineer. They would probably have to measure the length of each wire that is dropping the part in the bath, and they might even have to do a little bit of temperature reading, and so by the end of the day they might have one spoke done. Engineers are good at that. And then if you're in Shingletown, the dog probably is shed all its hair and everything and peed on the blue chromate. Probably the dogs over there in Shingletown probably like the blue chromate. They might just piss right in it. So you never know. But for just a regular guy like me that wants to plate at home, this has been a really good system. So I hope that helps anybody out there. And I'll see you on my next video.